Hi, everybody. Uh, just apologize in advance. Have a bit of a cold, so I have a couple of questions here, both kind of tail ending each other, roughly, and they're really very important questions, I think. One is from Carol Corbet, uh, and she says, "In your webcast, you mentioned that more energy for the helping of others can also be hurtful because that hurtfulness comes from you loving you. happens happens and it happens to everybody. More energy leads to stronger judgments uh, with respect to ourselves and others. Seeing through yourself, softening the sensing. um, See, it's not quite a sentence, but she means um, looking at how you function and how you're dealing with life, um, and softening your responses to it is very helpful. So let's take a look at it from a particular point of view, mainly from the chakra sense, as far as I'm concerned, because you can actually get to perceive those things and find out that they are real and it's just not a theory. So these three lower centers that are ultimately engaged with our personality as we talk about a personality. In other words, it brings intensity into the system, and you use that intensity for a purpose that relates to however you think your personality should be. And this, of course, is cultivated from the time of your birth. And I keep saying that, but actually, probably from prior to the time of your birth in the womb, very likely. So when you're dealing with this, there's also various different belief systems that interact with that. If you're looking at um, the Hindu and Buddhist orientation, you're looking at these systems. The root center, for example, as everyone talks about the importance of energy flowing all the way up to the top of the head, often from their point of view, they call that energy activity, Kundalini. It's just a name. And although it's basically aligned with the concept of the fire of consciousness, that kind of thing. Bringing energy to the top of the head, primarily from the root center. And you can actually feel that. It's like a link. You can feel that energy moving straight up to the top of the head. It happens in very many different ways. And if you have that happen and you have a personality already constructed, what it does is, depending on how you see things, it increases everything in you that relates to your personality. It also, if you have a belief system that lies in and around that, you could call that very, very spiritual interaction, and it would be, on these material planes. But also, if that particular kind of thing happens, you cultivate a relationship with how valuable you are, how important you are because you had it happen. It's the way we are. By the way, in India or wherever it would happen, same thing is still true. In our Western worlds, we still do the same thing. We do it relative to our belief systems. So what you're really doing there is enhancing what you already believe is valuable and true for you. Your judgments can be pretty strong because you've had that happen, therefore others haven't had it happen, and therefore others aren't as spiritual as you are. That's still personality stuff. If that happens, there's an increase in the gonad center, your willful center. There's an increase in your emotional disposition. There's an increase in relationship to how you see the world, but it leans on the biases that you've had before. I'm sorry, that's how it tends to work. So you can understand that this flow of consciousness that interacts with the first three centers, root, gonad, and solar plexus, makes everything in your personality larger. This has always been a dilemma. And it's always been known through the sages that there are many different levels of this kind of interaction. But the focus often is on the personality becoming more sensitized to how important it is because it was important before. Not necessarily was it overtly important, but there was a hope to be valued and important in the eyes of others. And that really is attached to a vulnerability that everyone on this planet has in terms of their relationship with their life. That, of course, is part of the family background, the cultural background, and part of being recognized and remembered somehow for some purpose, kind of in a kind of a way being a part of history. Unfortunately, real higher state engagement on a very high level has no interest in even being known. And I say unfortunately because we have a misunderstanding and misreading of what all of this might mean. Because being really able means that you are attached literally to enabling others to become more able than they could ever dream of being. Because that is part of the service, a loving service related to these higher state beings. From my perspective, of course. So when you ask a question like this, you can be hurtful because that hurtfulness comes from you loving you. One of the most interesting things, dangerous things, loving things that does occur is you fall in love with how you are. No matter how it is. It's subtle. Sometimes not that subtle. But in relationship to how things should be, finding yourself in a very caring, loving mode makes you feel comfortable. Well, for some. Others, it depends on what construct is related to you and your loving modes. And this is where the difficulty comes in. If indeed you already are in love with yourself, I mean, relatively speaking, in a certain way, let's put it this way, you like to be a certain way and you can't always be that way. Whatever that way is, doesn't matter what it is. That is a link with loving. That's how you love you. And now, if there is more energy coming in, it expands that so that you can see into it and through it, and you may not be in love with exactly how that works at that time. It might be disturbing, actually, from time to time. Or you might come up with another conclusion. And that way, because others disturb me and they should not be disturbing me. And you can understand how that would be if you had millions or billions of people or hundreds of people or just numbers of people engaging with each other, each one in love with the way they do things and trying to figure out literally why these other people are not acknowledging that great love that you have for yourself. This, by the way, may be completely and totally unknown to any of us, usually, mainly to all of us. You need a real sense of humor in this one. Or not. You might be in love with you as you being the only person that has the right view, whatever that means. And surely none of us have perfected views all the time. It's just the way it is. We may not even have enough information about what's going on in another. And even then, they may be only trying to survive. If you can perceive that in yourself, and this is one acknowledged manner relative to the sage, real sages, if they can perceive how difficult it is for you to be anything other than how you are because you are protecting yourself at the time from being misunderstood or devalued somehow, then suddenly you begin to realize you've been in the same position yourself. And this means that you start to see through that process of reflexive loving and you learn how to acknowledge within yourself, by the way, that as they are, you can also be. And this is a difficult thing. I think probably one of the most difficult things in the Western world, because we tend to consider what we think is valuable as often in a moment the only thing that's valuable. And I'm talking about all kinds of things, including beliefs, by the way, including beliefs that are rigidly acquired, which, by the way, often are. That's okay. But they become give us a kind of comforting sense of value, gives us a value for ourselves if we acknowledge that we have a belief in a certain way, and others who don't have it, they can be maybe okay, but not as really able as you, this kind of thing. Problem with that, right there, is that if increased energy comes in, you're going to act like that more, not less, until you allow yourself a pause, a second or two, a recognition of, my goodness, I wonder if there may be some reality in what she or he might be saying, but it's different than what I think. And it makes me feel internally responsive in a kind of a way that's uncomfortable. In other words, it's not how you feel love for yourself. It doesn't relate or align with the images that you've already embedded within your mental structure, your emotional structure, or just basically the way things have to be valued and to be understood. This is where it touches you. If you're willing to allow yourself to be touched by possible adjustment in the reality that you've constructed for yourself. Experientially, things are very valuable, in my opinion. Some people don't agree with that, so you might as well know that right off the bat. But if you are involved with an experience that relates to understanding or perceiving energy beyond what is normal in our world on these matter planes, then no one can take that away from you, but they can disagree with you uh, out of nowhere and have no information that would actually uh, say that, no way that they could say that your experience wasn't true. But their theory may not have room for it in a particular manner or a particular way. That is the way we do things on these planes. And it's a dilemma in relationship to internal growing. I talked about the root center going right up to the top of the head. But the gonad center can be stimulated to such a degree that there can be movement in both of those centers and follow right up to the top of the head. That would be quite an experience for you. Also, the solar plexus can be stimulated. Link up with the root and gonad center right up to the top of the head. Well, that's a pretty big event. That in itself, it's huge. It's often thought by some that might be possible, and it is for some, but it's rare. And when it is rare, then here's a question. Is it possible that that individual may still think that their personality is a very key player in engaging with other people, and how important they are because they can have all of those three centers in operation right up to the top of the head? And I would say, yes, that would be true. Personally, I would say that. However, that would be a beginning point where an individual might be helped to learn how to perceive how they are within themselves so that they could begin to loosen up their comfort zone, so to speak, or the zone that they believe, or zone of belief that they have already defended and keep strong hold in, so that they could begin to understand that there's more to growing than even what they have acquired. This is very difficult for us in the West, but no less difficult in the East. This is a very important thing to try and remember. This concept of understanding and learning how to engage with humility, because humility means something other than acting humble. It means for sure that you know the difference between you and another state that is not always engaged on these planes for its purpose, and normally engaged on these planes for our purposes. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, for some reason, those higher states believe that we are capable of beginning to understand that how we act is to protect ourselves from being abandoned, literally, by others. Now, this is a strange thing to say. The abandonment is something like not being considered valuable enough to be around because of how we are or how we aren't. It's a deeper level of understanding. Think for a second. if we look at it from the point of view that we engage with others and consider others for about a second or two and come up with an opinion about others and how they are and why they are that way, we are abandoning them as beings that might be able to grow beyond where they are. And you are also hurting yourself because you are abandoning you by stiffening up your relationship with you. This is very difficult because it includes all the personalizations that we come up with around being normal in our world. Well, in a kind of a way, that higher state, from my perspective, will help you to try to understand that and help you even to soften it down a bit. But it will also make you feel as if something's off because we are taught right from the beginning that others know more than we do. And they're absolutely right. And we can't wait to get to be an adult so we can think the same way as they did. No flaw in them. It's just the way they were brought up. No flaw in you, just the way you're brought up. But a deeper, loving understanding will get to the point where you understand that 8 billion people on this planet are doing the same blooming thing. Relatively speaking, in the language of them, and I'm not only talking about languages per se, I'm talking about how you function in the world. And you will believe that you are the only one that is doing it in an appropriate way. Now, that isn't as, the word is not harmful, false word maybe. It's more like not able to understand deeper. Because when you are able to understand deeper, there's a rise inside of you that's akin to loving, where you understand the depth of difficulty that all of us have in relationship to beginning to open enough to at least sense the depth of inability, I'll call it fear and hurt in another sequence probably, that hold so strong in us. We are fearful that others will not love us. So we construct a form relative to our elders, and we use it unknowingly most of the time for a strict purpose of making sure that we'll be recognized as valuable. And that can be hurtful because it closes your eyes. It closes you, you stop listening. You can only listen through your bias. You can't open the door to an internal sense of deeper caring than that which comforts you. I think we need to keep whatever comforts us until, in some way, we can begin to understand that that is not a comforting, but a notation of fear that we will not be loved. Because we have not been loved relative to a higher state from our perspective. At that point, our focus is still on our personalities and the shells that we construct and call them such. There's no devaluation in that from a higher state. it is well acknowledged from my perspective that those higher states already know that this is what we do. Such patience and compassion and understanding. It's amazing. And grateful that there is such patience and understanding, from my perspective at least. This is a really important question because it's a day question. It's a daily, daily, daily question. It's how we live life all the time. What we presume, what we assume, what we engage with, what we relate to directly, without thinking, without allowing ourselves to pause and hesitate in our expressions, because we're constantly maintaining the mold that's been constructed all our lives out of fear that we will lose something. And that is a little bit difficult for all of us. So learn how to soften that. It's really difficult. And we also have, on top of this, experiences, family experiences, friends experiences that are not really understandable. Can't understand how people do this or that or something else. Why would they do these things? I remember asking somewhat of a question like that back when I was in my 30s. And I thought, the image that I had was a glowing worm trying to make its way through the earth. You probably understand that I like metaphors. This one I didn't like so much, but it was pretty funny. Made me think. And we don't understand everything on these planes, but thinking we do makes us feel a lot more comfortable than thinking we don't. It's a matter of attempting to understand ourselves and how it really is okay to make adjustments if we can allow ourselves to even begin to be insightful about reasons and purposes that we allow ourselves to automatically assume from our perspectives. So that is one question. Hopefully that makes a tiny little bit of sense, Carol. And there's this question from Christina Chalminska, is roughly in the same department. Christina is very eloquent in how she puts things. Right, Christina? It seems, though, as though the universe has dealt a very difficult pack of cards for humans who wish to follow a path of spiritual growth on this planet. Sometimes it seems that way. I find it difficult to strive to grow spiritually and at the same time not judge. By the way, even those who are not growing spiritually have difficult times on these planes. You need to be okay with understanding that that may be true. Difficult. I find a hard time. I find it difficult to strive to grow spiritually. I think I better put my glasses on. And at the same time, not judge myself or others when I often too late notice that my responses or way of being could have been different. Yeah, this is what we do. This is just how we are here. Also, we try to judge ourselves for all of this stuff, and I think the better route, even though it's not a perfect route, is just to recognize it and say, okay, this is what human beings do, and I am one of those things. Also, it's difficult because you may meet people who don't seem to judge people, but they do. They can judge inside just as much as outside. So I think commentary is a very interesting thing that we all grab onto when we're talking about these things. What tools do we, let's see, yeah, what tools do we have to help us juggle all of this, except that we are not perfect and not judge and continue to struggle to grow regardless? Well, I always find that these matter planes are really interesting. I've had my share of not so easy stuff as well as everybody else. And our levels on these material planes are quite something, because I suspect that these planes are in a process of growth. It's a suspicion. There are people who have theories about this. I think Theosophy has theories about these things, Rosicrucians, a few other organizations, and interesting, very fascinating. As to them being perfect, I suspect none of our theories are totally perfect, but some would say that theirs are. However, inquire, look around, see if you can find anything that fits well enough for you to make you feel better. But our levels at this level, I think, this level is actually capable of engaging with higher states. But if these planes are also growing, then everything on the planes may be growing too. That includes us, but includes everything. Animals as well as trees and all the rest of whatever is here. Not sure how that normally shakes out, but there are theories about that too, especially in terms of reincarnation. If you read the reincarnation stories of Buddha, you'll get an idea of how some folks think about this. Other folks don't want to accept that at all. But this plane, I think, is really capable of shifting and growing. But here's what that might mean. I'm wondering if our plane is capable of shifting and growing, would it be like a personality who is actually growing and at the same time not wanting to move, not wanting to understand even themselves, not wanting to do anything other than what they've already practiced doing all their life? And because if they did, that would mean they're not in control anymore. So there's a way of doing that. Make yourself feel in control. Work with you. You be the one that engages with you. Try to understand you. It's not good enough to be trying to help other people. You got to try and help yourself as well. This is a really important thing. I'm not talking about helping to get to be perfect. I honestly think that that's a bit of nonsense. You try and do better than you do now in terms of your engagement with others. And sometimes you won't be allowed to. Sometimes you will have to do you, because within you, that's a step too far. Notice it's a step too far. Best you can, just the best you can, and then start again. I remember asking myself how often I wonder, do I have to start internally again in a particular area? As often as it takes, just to soften it a little bit so you have a chance to rethink. Be curious about it. Recognize that there's something in there that has been constructed as a you that helps you to get through your day. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What you do is try and understand. That allows you, by attempting to understand, allows energy to come into you to help you understand more. Then you get to understand other people differently, just differently. Not better, best, most fantastic, only one that understands, just differently. There are so many variables in each one of our lives and in the lives of others you happen to be around, whether it be family or whether it just be friends or whether it be just folks that you see walking around. Variables are tremendous. And shockingly, most of us don't know what they all are. Is it important to know all of them? I'm not sure that that's true where we are in our development. I think it can be disturbing sometimes to understand you better than you do. In that disturbance, you have to bring to bear some respect, some kindness, sympathy, if you want, empathy for yourselves. Most people do the best they possibly can. Whether they believe that or not, it just does not mean that they don't. They do the best they can. Without their thinking, they are. And this is a very difficult thing for most of us. All we're doing is preparing internally the best you can and energetically the best you can by doing some of these exercises, by the way, Christina, that you may or may not do all the time. And I'm not talking to Christina, I'm talking to all of us. These exercises actually help. It means it broadens out, stretches you a little thinner so you can see a little bit better. And sometimes even you might be able to catch something before you start beating yourself up. It's not about beating yourself up. It's not about correcting the bad in you, like we've been taught from time to time. It's more like understanding that this has been the way you thought things had to be done in this situation. And with a little recognizing, you might see that it doesn't work as well as you thought it should. And this is how things are in this plane. Seeing that kind of helps. Giving yourself a hard time for not being perfect is not helpful. Giving others a hard time for them not being perfect is also not very helpful. Understanding the difficulties that underlie a relationship with oneself can sometimes be helpful. But you have to find time to let yourself be okay. And that is a valuable piece of information, I think. And it's sometimes very difficult to do. I think fear enters into this whole equation. I think I talked about it with Carol too. Is somehow we're fearful. We've been inundated by this concept, fearful of not being of value. And then we judge ourselves to be not of value, and then we're afraid that we're not and doing our bit. Nobody can do everything. It's not in our contract. You contract human being 2023 on this plane under these circumstances. It's not a contract you signed. It's a circumstance that you end up in because others are in the same kind of thing. And what you're doing is practicing trying to be respectful, understand. You can't do that very well emotionally. Hurts mentally, you attempt the best you can. And then you turn your emotional, mental mind on yourselves if you're not perfectly successful. It's not helpful. Recognize that you do the very best you can. And that is a hard thing to allow to be okay. But it's fundamental. None of us are perfect on these planes. Planes aren't set up that way. Planes are set up to change. If indeed we are a cognizant being, a being who's able to learn how to perceive deeply, and thereby engage with these planes with a link towards higher states and a link within higher states, because we lie within higher states as well. So we're alive and cognizant, awake to some degree, with that awareness that it does exist, not just a theory. Then that helps to wake the plane up so that others being born into this plane can be born in at least partially awake. In other words, aware of the fact that there are other states, so that it might help you and I, and perhaps some of the rest of us, to be more willing to allow a deeper level of loving that can be handled by us without the personality, shape, or shell being elevated into a position beyond others, because that is not the issue in relationship to higher states. If you look around with many belief systems, we have grabbed onto, in most of these belief systems, a system that was related to war, armies, general, emperor, general, majors, colonels, captains, brigadier, whatever, lieutenants, plebes. And that's how we see things on that level. And that seems to be reasonable because our corporations are constructed that way. Our relationships are constructed that way. We're watching the masters. Those who are the best will get the most. Seems we have this all upside down. That's a game. That's how we bring accolades to a person or persons who are doing really able things in certain things. At that higher state, we have done the same thing. Higher state beings, some who have, it's been their job to be recognized so that we could actually think that there is a possibility that that might happen ultimately somewhere along the line of our existence as a human structure. These forms have been treated the same way. They have become our emperors. Krishna, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad, Rumi, whatever you come up with, plus 101 or 1,001 different people who you believe are extra special. It's what we do, but it doesn't mean what we think it means. It's how we set it up to mean something of that nature simply because of our need to believe that we are valuable based on certain things. This is a natural tendency. It's not a bad tendency. It's just what we do. I'm sure in the days of the monsters, so-called monsters, the lizard worlds, some king or rex being was the most strongest. Therefore, they were celebrated amongst all those monsters. Yeah, I doubt it very much, but nonetheless, it's just a metaphor. It's a bad one, probably. But your relationship with you is a growing one. And in fact, from my point of view, an energetic one. So if you run out of things that you've tried at least once and you don't try them 24 hours a day, try something else energetic to help that flow, to find a balance. Do the pump, do the balancing under those armpits. Ad nauseum. Open the hands. Make sure you do that first. Be aware above your head and behind you. You will find this is very difficult to do because your focus is on doing you. And that is normal. Same is true of me and anybody else. Don't let anybody fool you. This is, as a human being, this is difficult because we've already constructed elementary systems that we constantly maintain, revisit, reconstruct. This is a natural sense of engagement. Go slow. Engage with that. Soften it down the best you can. And smile when you really succeed. And when you don't, oh, I missed that one. Don't worry, it'll come back. Do the best you possibly can with this. And be caring for you in a different way. Know for sure that as you are more caring for you in a different way, you'll get a little more used to it being okay. Because the energy will follow how you function. That way, you get to see you more, and you get also to see the positive things as well as your well-trained judgmental engagement that all of us have. I think right now what I'm going to do is what we'll do is set up some meditation, and we'll meditate for a while. I wish everybody well, and thank you very much for sending in some of those questions. I would appreciate more if you can allow yourself time to do that. And recognize sometimes things are a little bit more difficult than we can handle. It's true. Those things can happen, and they do. And I wish everyone well when they do happen, if they do happen. And other times, be happy best you can. Take care. I'm just going to set something up here. So give me a couple of minutes.
Good job. Sangam Shalom. Good job. 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 Sangam Shalom. Good job. Sangam Shalom. Good job. 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 Sangam Shalom. Good job. To So
Now we'll just begin to do the balancing and grounding. I wish everybody a happy Easter, and please take care of yourself.